Melissa Carter was sitting in her study one bright afternoon with the gentle sunlight filtering through the half-drawn blinds as she tried to focus on an important spreadsheet on her laptop, a critical project that might finally secure her a long-coveted promotion. Despite her best efforts, her mind kept drifting, and with a heavy sigh, she rubbed her tired eyes and shifted in her chair for what felt like the 10th time in 1 hour. Suddenly, the peace was interrupted by a notification. Her 5-year-old daughter, Sophia, had sent a selfie from the family camping trip with her grandparents. Normally, the house would be filled with the joyful sounds of Sophia chattering excitedly about her day at kindergarten or eagerly asking to be pushed on the backyard swing. But with Sophia away and the silence nearly overwhelming, Melissa's anxiety began to mount. She stood up slowly and left her desk, her thoughts racing as she wandered down the quiet hallway toward the master bedroom and adjoining bathroom. Once inside, she opened the cabinet above the sink. Her trembling fingers reached behind the mouthwash to retrieve an orange prescription bottle. Just as her fingertips brushed the plastic surface, a gentle but concerned voice startled her from the doorway. "Melissa, don't." The voice belonged to her husband, Mark, whose expression carried disappointment and worry in equal measure. His disheveled, dark hair and the subtle fidgeting of his hands betrayed his anxious state. "I know what you're thinking," he murmured softly as he stepped in the bathroom. "But remember, you promised 4 months clean. We've come so far." Melissa's hand hesitated near the bottle as she muttered, "I can't focus, Mark. This report is due tomorrow, and I haven't written a single coherent paragraph." Her voice cracked, laden with exhaustion and frustration. Gently, Mark lowered her hand from the cabinet. "If you take one now, you'll take another tomorrow," he explained quietly, "and then we're back to square one." Those therapy sessions would have been for nothing. Melissa's shoulders slumped as she closed the cabinet door, catching a glimpse of her tired reflection in the mirror. "I know you're right," she whispered, trailing off in uncertainty. "You're really worried about Sophia, aren't you?" Mark's compassionate tone reassured her as he led her back into their softly lit bedroom, sitting together on the edge of the bed. "This is really what it's all about," he said gently. Melissa acknowledged with a nod, feeling embarrassed for being so transparent. The distance between her and her daughter had grown longer with each passing night. 2 nights away now stretched ominously into 3, with only one brief message since they had left early the previous morning. Although Sophia's grandparents had taken her camping countless times before, this time felt different. "Mark," she insisted in a trembling tone, "I know they're experienced, and they've toured half the country in that camper van, but they've never spent 3 nights with a toddler. And besides, your parents aren't exactly young anymore. Sophia is so full of energy. What if she wanders off while they're napping?" Mark's gentle smile helped ease her worry as he massaged her tense shoulders, his strong fingers working out the knots formed by all her internal turmoil. "Remember why your parents offered to take her in the first place," he reminded her. "They wanted to give you the time to finish this project and possibly secure your promotion." As his hands worked their comforting magic, Melissa could almost forget her anxiety. "You know," Mark said playfully, leaning in closer, "if you finish your work early, we might finally get some alone time. When was the last time we had the house all to ourselves for more than a few hours?" Despite her lingering tension, Melissa smiled and admitted, "You make a compelling argument. I'm sorry for even thinking about taking the medication. 4 months is the longest I've been clean, and I don't want to break that streak." With renewed determination, she stood tall, vowing that the pills would remain safely locked away in the cabinet, keeping her promises to Mark, her therapist, and most importantly, to herself. With Mark by her side, Melissa left the bathroom and returned to the bedroom. There, her phone chimed with a new notification, a message from Mark's mother, Carol. Eagerly, Mark opened the chat while Melissa watched a blurry selfie accompanied by a string of nonsensical letters appear on the screen. Melissa couldn't help but chuckle as it was immediately clear that little Sophia had gotten hold of Carol's phone. "Look at this," Melissa said, showing Mark the picture. "Sophia's learning how to take selfies now." Mark peered over her shoulder and laughed, marveling at the fact that, At only 5 years old, Sophia was already more tech-savvy than many adults. In the photo, the background clearly revealed a campsite, and though the image was a bit blurry, Sophia's beaming smile and wild blonde curls were unmistakable signs that she looked happy and safe, which for a moment helped ease Melissa's anxiety. However, before Melissa could dial back Sophia for reassurance, another photo arrived, much clearer this time. It featured Sophia with her tongue playfully sticking out in classic, childlike fashion, with the camper van and a few grandparents visible in the background. But then, something else caught Melissa's attention. A man in the background whose presence unsettled her deeply. At first, she thought he must be another camper, perhaps a member of another family they had met earlier at the site. Yet, when Melissa zoomed in closer on his face, her heart pounded as recognition slowly crept in. "Mark," she called in a tense voice. "Come look at this." Mark, who had just returned to the living room to read the news on his tablet, immediately joined her. "What is it? Just come here, please," he urged. Holding out the phone, Melissa pressed it into his hands. Mark squinted at the screen and pinched the image to zoom in further on the man's face. "Looks like some random camper to me. Probably another family we met at the site," he remarked skeptically. But Melissa insisted. "Look more carefully. That's Derek, my ex-husband." Mark frowned. "I don't think so," he said, but Melissa was certain. Derek had always been impeccably groomed, with darker hair than the man in the picture. Although the man now had light brown hair and a fuller beard, Melissa still recognized the shape of his eyes and the set of his jaw. "This is definitely Derek," she murmured. Checking her phone's calendar, she whispered, "It's been 5 years, 5 long years since he went to prison for domestic violence and drugs." Mark's expression softened as he recalled Melissa's painful history with Derek. The abuse she had suffered while pregnant with Sophia, the terrifying night when Derek had almost choked her before the police arrived. "If that is indeed Derek," Melissa continued, her voice trembling with mixed horror and disbelief, "then he must have been released. But why didn't anyone inform me? I should have been notified." Overwhelmed by panic, Melissa tried calling Carol, then Robert, Mark's father, but received no answer. "Let's go," she declared urgently, already grabbing her purse. Mark hesitated for a moment. "Melissa, are you sure?" "Let's go," she repeated, her voice rising with urgency. "If Derek is there with Sophia, we need to get to them right now." Seeing the gravity in her eyes, Mark nodded resolutely and rushed downstairs to start the car while Melissa gathered a few essential items. Before following him, however, Melissa ducked back into the bathroom one last time. She reopened the cabinet to stare once more at the dreaded medication. After a brief internal struggle, she grabbed the entire bottle and shoved it into her purse, leaving it behind as an emblem of the promises she was determined to keep. Outside, in the driveway with the engine already running, Mark gently urged her, "Melissa, let's go." As she slid into the passenger seat, she could still feel the heavy weight of that pill bottle as a constant reminder of her struggles. The family was heading toward Trinity Pines, a serene campground nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, where they had visited many times in the past. Mark advised her to call her in-laws again, while Melissa tried not to imagine the worst-case scenario, though a nagging thought told her that if Derek was indeed at the campsite with Sophia, nothing good could come of it. As the car sped along winding mountain roads, Melissa's thoughts drifted back to that fateful night when Derek had been arrested. She recalled being 8 months pregnant, her belly enormous and painfully tender, and the memory of his hands squeezing her throat in a fit of rage was something she had fought for years to forget. Just then, Mark pulled the car over as police and rangers had gathered near the center of the campground. The parking area buzzed with activity, and uniformed officers spoke with several campers. Among them, Mark spotted Carol's familiar blue and white camper van parked near a cluster of pine trees, along with Robert, who was now nearby. As they approached, Melissa overheard Carol describing the events of the previous night to a detective taking notes. Carol explained that a man named Collins had introduced himself, a man who had even joined them for a backyard barbecue the night before. He had come with a woman named Samantha, Carol added, remarking that both seemed incredibly kind with children. They had kept Sophia entertained, with Carol mentioning that, despite the babysitting, Sophia had been so happy playing and drawing that night. But then the narrative took a darker turn. The detective asked what had happened the following morning. Carol's voice quavered as she recounted that. After breakfast, they had said they were leaving soon. Sophia had protested, asking to play a little longer, only for the adults to promise that she would just pick some leaves and flowers like they had done the day before. However, as Carol explained, while she was cleaning inside the camper and Robert was engrossed in his book outside, Sophia was quickly ushered into a vehicle. Before anyone could react, the engine had roared to life and the vehicle sped away. Robert had run after them, but by then the van, and later another family vehicle, was gone. Melissa's heart pounded as she saw the police's flashlights and heard the sound of sirens drawing nearer. A detective explained that they had set up roadblocks and even issued an alert for Sophia. But without a license plate number, tracking the van was challenging. At that moment, Melissa's phone vibrated with an unknown number. Initially dismissing it as a marketing call, she eventually answered. In a hushed, chilling voice, a message came through. "Keep your voice down and listen carefully," the voice said. It was unmistakably Derek. In the background, Sophia's excited chatter could be heard as if she was oblivious to the danger. "Derek," Melissa whispered, her hand curling into a fist. "What have you done? Where's Sophia?" His response was unnervingly calm. "She's fine. She's having the time of her life. Actually, aren't you, sweetheart?" His tone then grew distant, as though he had turned his attention to speaking directly to Sophia. With a surge of desperate pleading, Melissa implored, "Derek, please, don't do this. She doesn't even know you." His voice then hardened as he retorted, "That's exactly the problem, isn't it? My own daughter doesn't know me. 5 years of her life gone, time I'll never get back." Then came a surge of anger. "You have no right. I have every right. I'm her biological father," he snapped, cutting her off. "Now listen closely. I don't want to hurt her. I didn't take her to harm her. I just want to talk. You and I have unfinished business." Melissa glanced back at the group gathered around the detective, with Mark watching her face etched with worry. "Why should I believe you?" she demanded. "You took my daughter. You knew she'd be here with my in-laws. You planned this, didn't you? And if you don't come alone, if you tell the police, or if you mention anything to that husband of yours about this call, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of mother you really are. I'll tell them every dirty little secret." His words sent a shudder through her. "What are you talking about? You can't threaten me. The police won't believe anything you say," Melissa countered in a shaky voice. Derek let out a derisive laugh. "Won't they have you forgotten? What about what you did? Cheating on me with Mark while you were pregnant, the amount of alcohol and drugs you consumed even though you knew you were carrying our child, or the money you stole from your company to feed your addiction." The barrage of accusations left Melissa nearly collapsing. Leaning against a nearby tree for support and keeping herself out of earshot of the others, she managed to say, "That's all in the past. Mark and I got help. We've been clean for 4 months, every single one of those months." Derek's tone dripped with sarcasm. "Only 4 months after 5 long years? So you were still taking drugs while caring for our baby?" Melissa insisted that her prescribed medication was safe and that she had only taken it after Sophia had fallen asleep, always discarding her breast milk afterward while breastfeeding. "In prison, I received therapy too," she added defensively. Derek, with a hint of pride, continued, "I have been completely clean for over 3 years now. If anyone deserves our daughter, it's me." He leaned back in his chair, his eyes narrowing as he considered her. "But that isn't the point. Here's what's going to happen tonight. Sophia stays with me. You must tell her the truth, that I am her father, her real father. Tomorrow, you won't come to pick her up. Instead, you can visit her on Saturday. And if I don't agree..." Melissa, already cornered, knew there was no real choice. "Then I'll call the police and tell them everything about your past," Derek said simply. Facing Derek's ultimatum, Melissa's heart sank. Reluctantly, she nodded. Together, they walked to the playground where Sophia was busy building a sandcastle with Samantha, a woman who had accompanied Derek. As soon as Sophia spotted Melissa, her face lit up with joy. "Mommy!" she squealed and ran into her arms. Melissa knelt and hugged her tightly, cherishing the warmth and security of her little body. Gently she asked, "Hi, sweetie. Are you having fun?" Sophia nodded enthusiastically, recounting in simple phrases the adventures of camping. Stories of Mr. Collins and Ms. Miller taking her camping, seeing deer, picking flowers, and enjoying marshmallows. The innocence of her voice made it all the more painful for Melissa to continue. Yet she steeled herself and said, "Sophia, sweetie, I need to tell you something very important. This man isn't really Mr. Collins. His name is Derek, and he is your biological father." Sophia's face scrunched with confusion. "But Daddy Mark is my daddy," she said simply. "Yes, Mark is your daddy too," Melissa explained softly, choosing her word with care. "But Derek is your real daddy, from when you were just a tiny baby in my womb." The child processed this revelation with the simple, untroubled logic of a 5-year-old. "So I have two daddies?" she asked. "Yes," Melissa confirmed with relief, grateful that her daughter appeared untroubled by the news. Sophia then looked up at Derek with curious eyes and asked, "Can I go to your house? Do you have toys?" Derek smiled, getting down to her level. "I do have toys and even a swimming pool. Would you like to see it?" Sophia's eyes widened with excitement, although moments later her expression faltered as she added, "But I want Mommy to come too. I miss Mommy." Melissa's heart broke at the sound of her daughter's distress. After a moment of hesitation, she said, "I can't come tonight, sweetheart. I have work to do, but you're going to stay at Derek's house tonight, and I will come get you tomorrow." When Sophia protested that she did not want her mother to be separated, Melissa quickly revised her plan. "Okay, how about this? I'll go with you to Derek's house, and then I'll leave." Sophia considered the compromise and reluctantly agreed. "Wonderful," Derek said in a low voice that only Sophia could not hear. "Just don't forget your documents and cooperate, or I will have to involve my lawyer." Melissa's heart ached as she watched Sophia willingly take Derek's hand while she herself felt powerless, trapped between handing her daughter to the man who had once been her abuser and fearing the consequences of her past misdeeds. Alone in her car later that day, with the heavy reality of her situation settling over her, Melissa's heart broke as she thought about the two impossible choices before her. She knew that if she surrendered Sophia to Derek, she would lose her daughter. But if she went to the police and confessed everything, her involvement in an embezzlement scandal from 5 years ago, her struggle with addiction, and all the betrayal that had haunted her life, she risked facing jail time and losing custody permanently. The tension in her body became almost unbearable, driving her to reach once more for the pill bottle in her purse. With shaking hands, she retrieved a pill and broke it in half, convincing herself that a smaller dose would be less dangerous. A temporary escape to help her think clearly without impairing her driving ability. She swallowed the half pill and for a few precious minutes felt the familiar calm wash over her, allowing her racing heart to slow and her mind to focus enough to start the car and leave the campground. The drive back home from Trinity Pines, which normally took under an hour, ended up compressed into 40 anxious minutes as Melissa's eyes fixated on the road, oblivious to the speeding car and the winding mountain roads. Arriving home, the quiet of the house brought an eerie feeling of isolation. Melissa went straight to the master bedroom where a small fireproof lockbox secured all their important documents: passports, social security cards, insurance policies, and Sophia's vital records, including her birth certificate, immunization records, and medical history. Methodically, she organized the papers into a manila folder, all while a storm of questions raced through her mind. Why would Derek want these documents? Was he planning to take Sophia away permanently, or even to another country? With fierce determination, she whispered, "I won't let that happen." Glancing at the clock, she realized that Oak Ridge, a town about 30 minutes away, was where the Sunshine Cafe, a local hub with its cheerful yellow awning and a colorful playground next door, stood waiting. In a burst of desperate hope, Melissa gathered Sophia's documents and headed for her car. At the cafe, Melissa parked across the street and scanned the area for any sign of Derek's familiar camper van. Instead, she saw only a sleek black luxury car. Then, in the sandbox outside, she caught sight of Sophia playing, her face radiant with carefree joy. Yet, as relief began to wash over her, a woman, presumably Samantha, spotted Melissa immediately and hurried toward her, ushering Sophia inside the playground area with swift, purposeful movements. Determined not to lose control over the situation, Melissa decided to leave the documents in the car for the moment, planning to surrender them only when absolutely necessary. Crossing the street, Melissa was approached by Samantha, a woman with sleek dark hair and designer sunglasses who exuded a confident air that matched Derek's refined appearance. "Samantha," Melissa acknowledged coldly. "He's waiting inside." Samantha nodded curtly and led her to a private room often reserved for children's birthday parties. Inside, Derek sat at a table, looking more polished than the man Melissa remembered from their troubled past. The harsh realities of prison had changed him physically. He was leaner now, with his bald head covered by light brown hair and a well-groomed beard in place of his old, clean-shaven face. "Melissa," Derek greeted, his voice carrying the same smooth charm that had once captivated her. "It's been a long time." Melissa could feel the effects of the earlier medication wearing off, while anxiety began to creep back as she faced him. "Sophia," she demanded, cutting out pleasantries. "She'll soon start looking for me if you don't let her go." Derek assured her that Sophia was perfectly fine and that Samantha would keep her entertained while they talked. In a calm, yet chilling tone, he said, "I want to discuss an arrangement with you. It's quite simple. I want you to tell Sophia the truth that I am her father, her real father. I want her to live with me. You can continue your life with Mark, and I'll have supervised visits with Sophia once a week." When Melissa challenged him, Derek's tone cooled as he added, "If you refuse, then I will call the police and tell them everything about your past. The drug use during pregnancy, the embezzlement from your company. If you don't comply, you'll lose Sophia anyway, and you'll end up in jail." Anger bubbled within Melissa as she remembered how Derek had once taken drugs and drank alongside her, neglecting to protect their unborn child. "You did those things too, Derek. You never tried to stop me even when I was pregnant," she protested. "We were both terrible, both unready for a baby." Derek retorted calmly, "The difference is I didn't steal thousands from my company, and I didn't cheat on you." Tears welled in Melissa's eyes as she pleaded, "Please, Derek, I don't take illegal drugs anymore. I've been through therapy. I have prescribed medication now, and I haven't even taken it in 4 months." Derek raised an eyebrow in disbelief and continued, "For months after all these years? It seems you were still relying on drugs while caring for our baby." Melissa insisted that her therapist had deemed the medication safe, and she had only taken it discreetly after Sophia was asleep. "In prison, I got therapy too," she reminded him, her voice trembling. Derek leaned back and, with a calculating gaze, outlined what would happen that evening. "Tonight, Sophia stays with me. You must tell her that I am her father. Tomorrow, you won't pick her up. You may only visit on Saturday. And if I don't agree to this, I will report everything you've done to the police." Cornered and feeling utterly powerless, Melissa reluctantly agreed. With heavy hearts, they walked together to the playground where Sophia was engrossed in building a sandcastle with Samantha. When Sophia saw her mother, her face lit up, and she ran to throw her arms around Melissa's legs. Tenderly, Melissa knelt down to embrace her daughter, cherishing the warmth and innocence. "My sweet Sophia," she said softly, "I need to tell you something very important. This man, who sometimes you know as Mr. Collins, is really Derek, your real father." Sophia's puzzled brow soon relaxed in a simple logic as she replied, "So I have 2 daddies?" Melissa confirmed gently, "Yes, my love, 2 daddies. Mark is your daddy in every way that matters, and Derek is your biological father." Although the truth was painful, the little girl accepted it with the untroubled innocence only a child can have. When Sophia asked if she could visit Derek's house because she wondered about the toys and the swimming pool, Derek smiled reassuringly and promised a glimpse of the fun that awaited her, though Melissa's heart ached at the thought. As the day wore on, with promises exchanged and plans reluctantly made, Melissa's inner turmoil deepened. She found herself later alone in her car, tears streaming down her cheeks and trembling hands clutching the steering wheel. "How could I let this happen?" she sobbed, her mind racing with the unbearable weight of losing her daughter. With a crushing sense of despair, she faced the two impossible choices: either surrender Sophia to Derek and risk losing her forever, or confess all of her past wrongs and face harsh consequences, including jail time, which might also mean losing custody of the daughter she loved so dearly. In a desperate bid for clarity, Melissa once again reached for the pill bottle in her purse. After breaking one pill in half and swallowing it, she immediately felt a surge of self-disgust. "I will not do this," she declared through choked words. Summoning every ounce of resolve, she hurled the remaining pills into a nearby trash bin and, after forcing herself to vomit out remnants of the earlier dose, gulped down water to rinse away the bitter taste. Her head cleared and her determination solidified. She resolved that she would go to Derek's house, the very place where so many painful memories resided, but she would not give up on herself nor on Sophia. At last, Melissa drove to Derek's house, a large, tastefully landscaped residence with manicured lawns and an in-ground pool that clearly appealed to a 5-year-old. Pulling into the driveway, she could already hear Sophia's joyful laughter drifting from an open window. Although Derek's car was parked in the garage, she parked her own vehicle for a moment to summon all her courage. On the passenger seat lay an envelope containing Sophia's important documents, the very papers Derek had demanded. Torn between fear and the need to protect her daughter, she decided to leave the envelope for the time being until the moment was absolutely right to surrender them. Stepping through the front door, memories, both beautiful and painful, flooded Melissa's mind. This house, now updated in its decor, had once been a refuge during her darkest days when addiction and regret had nearly destroyed her. Following Sophia's laughter, Melissa entered what had once been a nursery, now converted into a playful room filled with bright colors and whimsical artwork. In the corner, a familiar cabinet stirred long-buried memories of shame and lost time. It was there, on the cabinet top, that she had once felt hopelessly small. As if sensing her inner turmoil, Derek offered a smug smile. "So, you remember?" But Melissa ignored his taunt, setting the envelope and a treasured heart-shaped locket on the cabinet's surface. The locket, containing a photograph of Derek and Samantha embracing in an intolerable, secret manner, flooded her with a torrent of buried memories. Memories of drugs, betrayals, and her desperate search for solace in Mark's arms. Without warning, Derek's voice broke the silence. "What are you doing? Where are you going with those papers?" He rushed after her as she headed for the door. In a split second, Mark's urgent phone call came through on her voicemail, urging her to get help. Melissa tried to dial him back as she reached her car, but Derek caught up, snatching the phone from her hand and silencing it with a cruel growl. "What do you think you're doing?" he demanded, his charming facade crumbling to reveal the violence beneath. Desperate, Melissa struggled, clutching the locket and envelope tightly. "Let go of me, Derek," she cried, but his next move was brutal. A backhanded slap that split her lip and sent her sprawling onto the driveway. As Sophia screamed "Mommy" from the doorway, Melissa shouted for her to go inside and be safe, but the shock of the violence left her disoriented. Derek's anger surged as he demanded the locket, accusing her of infidelity and betrayal, listing old wounds of cheating, drinking, and stolen funds. In a flurry of pain, Melissa used the envelope as a makeshift weapon, but it was ineffectual against his violent strength. With chilling determination, Derek grabbed her by the throat, dragging her inside the house. They were forced into a struggle on a bedroom bed, tangled in limbs and raw panic. Melissa fought desperately, clawing, kicking, and writhing in an attempt to break free from his iron grip, until a distant siren wailed, growing steadily louder. At that moment, Derek cursed, You called the police, tightening his grip around her throat. In a desperate final act, Melissa managed to gasp out, "No, Mark must have gotten my message." Overcome by fury, Derek snatched an old baseball bat from a bedside table, a relic from his college days, and raised it above his head. "I hope you never get to watch Sophia grow up," he snarled, the bat swinging ominously toward her skull. The last thing Melissa saw before darkness overtook her was the bat, and then the steady beep of a heart monitor pulled her back from the brink. Melissa awoke later in a sterile hospital room under harsh fluorescent lights. The pain in her head was intense despite the medication, and as she slowly came to consciousness, the memories of what had transpired at Derek's house flooded back with terrible clarity. A gentle nurse entered, smiling professionally. "You're awake. How are you feeling?" the nurse inquired softly. Melissa murmured, "It hurts, but I'm okay," as relief washed over her at the mention of Sophia's safety. Soon, Mark entered the room, holding Sophia's hand. The little girl, careful not to disturb her mother, ran to her side and exclaimed, "Mommy, you're awake. I was so scared when you were sleeping." Mark explained in a tone filled with both relief and concern that Melissa had been unconscious for about 3 hours and that Sophia had saved her by calling 911 after Derek's attack. Melissa listened in amazement as Mark recounted how Sophia had braved the terrifying moment by using the phone in the kitchen, channeling the lesson she had learned from him. "I don't want him to be my daddy," Sophia declared earnestly, and those words, so full of innocent wisdom, broke Melissa's heart, yet also gave her hope that they could survive this nightmare. Soon, the police arrived. Derek and Samantha were taken into custody. Detectives explained that multiple charges would be laid against them for kidnapping, assault, and false imprisonment. They also mentioned that the camper van used at the campsite had been abandoned and that evidence, including Sophia's belongings, a stuffed rabbit, and some drawings, had been recovered. Later, during questioning by Detective Wilson and Officer Garcia, Melissa revealed the painful truth of her past. In a trembling confession, she admitted that 5 years ago, before she had married Mark, she had stolen about $15,000 from her company to feed her drug addiction and pay off debts, a secret that had been Derek's leverage against her. "He threatened me, saying that if I went to the police, he would expose everything," Melissa tearfully explained. The detectives took detailed notes, aware that she would soon face prosecution, and warned her that the future custody of Sophia would be determined by family court. When Melissa hesitantly asked whether her therapist's statement about her recovery might help her case, the detective reassured her that genuine rehabilitation and maintained sobriety would indeed work in her favor. After the police departed, promising to return the next day for a formal statement, Mark turned to Melissa with a complex mixture of emotions: anger, disappointment, and deep sorrow. "Why didn't you tell me everything?" he asked softly. Melissa admitted, "I was so afraid of losing you and Sophia." Mark reassured her, "We've fought our demons side by side, and nothing from the past will make me abandon you." Sophia, with her small yet earnest voice, asked, "Mommy, are you going away?" With a heavy heart, Melissa explained that while she might have to go away for a while to make things right and face the consequences of her past misdeeds, she promised, "I will come back, sweetie. And while I'm gone, you will stay with Mark and your grandparents. They will take good care of you." When Sophia innocently inquired whether Derek would still be her dad, Melissa carefully explained, "Derek is your biological father, yes, but Mark is your dad in every way that truly matters. He loves you and cares for you every day." As Melissa watched her daughter snuggle close to Mark, a strange sense of peace and resolve began to settle over her despite the uncertain future. For the first time in years, she felt worthy of her daughter's love. Not because she was perfect, but because she had found the strength to be honest, take responsibility, and put Sophia's well-being above her own fears. In the end, Melissa understood that love sometimes meant making the most difficult choices. It sometimes required sacrificing one's own freedom or accepting harsh consequences to ensure the safety and happiness of the ones we love. And now, armed with truth and a renewed determination to face her past, Melissa was ready to step forward, no matter how painful the path ahead might be, believing that someday Sophia would grow up surrounded by genuine love, guided by the steady support of Mark and the hope that, even in the darkest times, a mother's love endures.